are listening to and streaming a More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and I'm really delighted to be in conversation with my next two guests. Dr. Isaac Wilson is joining us. He's a Democratic strategist, and he is the former chair of the Florence County, South Carolina Democratic Party. We're also joined with William Godwin, who is a former White House fellow. We always like to double click on that because we don't want any confusion around here. No fake news.
No confusion. None at all.
A former White House fellow and also former Gary City Council president. We are delighted to have you both join us again.
Good to be here.
All right, family. So look, let's start with the media consolidation that has a lot of people uneasy across the industry. We fear it and feel it right here in LA, where our home station is located. Because this is a story about power, plain and simple. A federal judge granted a 14-day temporary restraining order pausing Paramount's roughly $111 billion acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery. This deal, would put Paramount's CBS, MTV, Paramount Plus all under the same roof as Warner Brothers. Warner's HBO Max, specifically over 50 cable channels, and notably both CBS News and CNN. The judge states that the state's antitrust case likely violates federal law. California Attorney General Rob Bonta called it a critical first win in an effort to stop the deal entirely. William, when two of the last major independent news organizations in this country, CBS News and CNN, the fact they could end up under one corporate parent controlled by the son of a tech billionaire, what does that mean for how our communities get information?
Well, it's very concerning, and there's a reason why our country has antitrust laws to ensure that there's maximum competition, not just for profit reasons and pricing reasons, but as you suggest, information reasons. When we think about the media, how we get our news sources, the diversity of those sources, diversity of opinions that are being represented for us to have access to. We don't want that to be controlled by a few. We want it to be controlled by as many players as possible to have a diversity of viewpoints being shared with Americans.
Well, what do you make of the politics of this, Isaac? I mean, why aren't more people talking about the potential harmful effects of a merger this size? I mean, we're not old, and we remember that whole argument around too big to fail. Remember when Obama was trying to figure out what to do with the auto industry? Remember when we were coming out of, or at least attempting to come out of the financial crisis of around 2008, 2009? There are a lot of folks that had a lot of questions about companies that were too big to fail. And here we are, not even 20 years later. And it looks like this Warner Brothers merger is on the glide path to becoming the too big to fail example that we said we need not do again.
What I think you fail on probably getting the deal done in their eyes, but I think you fail the American people because when you have just one handful of companies that are just controlling everything, it has a large impact on how people get their news and what they get. They don't have it's not a competition for other companies to put it out and how they put it out. So this hurts Americans in every which way imaginable. So this is the way that we watch and read and hear different things. So consumers lose choices to turn to a CNN, to turn to MSNBC, or turn to a Fox News. If they're going to put everything under one big conglomerate, the news is probably going to be the same, and what they put out is going to be the same. And Lord knows, don't let Donald Trump be at the table or be in cahoots with it in some way. You're really going to have a problem then. So the merger serves the public interest instead of the shareholders.
William, let's talk about President Trump's interest in this particular deal. There are a number of folks who have called into question the cozy relationship that David Ellison and his father, Larry Ellison, have with President Trump and the Trump administration. The president has not been shy about saying that he wants people gone from CNN. David Ellison reportedly has not been shy about saying that there would be some major changes, major editorial changes made at CNN should they take over. What's the end game for the president? What does the president want to gain out of this particular deal? And will any of that become a red flag for any of the federal judges reviewing this merger?
Well, I think for certain, Donald J. Trump is one of the most media savvy presidents that we've had in a long time, maybe since Ronald Reagan, maybe more than Ronald Reagan. And so he's very sensitive to what's happening on TV, what's happening on social media, and all portals of information. I don't know his personal view on this. I think that we know that many of the agencies are highly political, and we know that the regulatory process is being used, right, as a stick to control, to cajole, and to ensure that their policies, that their viewpoint is given the max perspective, and anyone who goes against that is penalized. So I'd be very concerned about what the Federal Trade Commission ultimately does, depending on once this 14-day stay is over, right? They're the ultimate decision makers, and we'll see. This could go all the way up to the Supreme Court, right? And so we'll see how that goes.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. Well, moving along, next, this next story really made my blood boil doing research for the show. A new study found that Google Maps, and who doesn't use Google Maps, right? We all, Google Maps has us all in the chokehold. At least from time to time. A new study found that Google Maps has been deleting nearly all the reviews that people posted about their experience inside ICE detention facilities. A Tulane University professor who's been tracking this since last year found that almost all the reviews, almost every single one of the reviews that she originally collected in 2025 are now gone. And only 4 ICE facilities out of a dozen still allow reviews at all. Now, Google says it removes reviews for, quotes, places that people go to without choice, like prisons and police stations. But, and this is the part that got me, a Homeland Security spokesperson actually responded by saying, quote, being in a detention is a choice, pointing to the administration's app-based self-deportation program. And so, I want to get your read on this, Isaac. Real testimony, people describing overcrowding, lack of translators, being held far longer than they were sentenced. It's being erased with no public notice. Is this content moderation, or is this quiet erasure of accountability?
Oh, it's definitely erasure of it. Government facilities, I don't care what facility you're talking about, the White House, Department of Energy, you're talking about the Smithsonian. It doesn't matter. If you're a government agency or facility, you should not operate behind a curtain. Public oversight is a part of public trust. So whether you support immigration enforcement or you don't, transparency should never be controversial, and they're making this controversial. So if reviews are being removed simply because they're critical, that is a problem, and Americans don't deserve that. They deserve accurate information about what institutions are doing and how they're operating behind a government's name. So accountability doesn't remove anything. It actually strengthens democracy. And so we need that accountability from Google, and they need to leave those comments so that people and American people can make conscious decisions on whether they support something or not.
William, we know the Department of Homeland Security is denying requesting these takedowns. The folks over at Google are saying that the moderation is policy-based, not politically directed. Do those arguments hold? I mean, are those reasonable arguments that are being presented by the Department of Homeland Security and Google? Or is this an example of some of the capitulation to the Trump administration that folks on the left have accused industry and government of doing?
It sounds like capitulation, right? It's hard to know for sure what story is true, but here's what I do know: school is compulsory for Americans, right? And I don't know. I have to check this whether reviews of K-12 schools are allowed or not allowed on Google. That's something I have to look into. So I'm wondering to what extent their distinction is specious, and is it really just a way to get around their real goal, which, to your point, is to capitulate to the administration and not share with the broader public some of the rights violations, the inhumanities, the unsanitary and dangerous conditions that may exist in some of these facilities.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is some pretty wild stuff, and like I said, one of the major powers that we all hold is the power to be able to document, and the fact that these reviews are allegedly being erased makes it hard to not just document, but ultimately to hold folks accountable. And so we're going to continue to follow this story. But before we go to break, I want to also pick up this other industry-related story. We're watching warnings from industry, from academic institutions and local governments about a coming federal funding shock that's tied to healthcare policy shifts. We're going to continue tracking this as it develops, but I want to ask you all, do you see a scenario where the weaponization of federal grants is about to turn up? I think there are a lot of people who think that, okay, maybe the worst of it has passed. What say you, Isaac?
Well, here in South Carolina, we just dealt with it, right? Where Pamela Yvette was running for, she was running for governor, and she made comments at South Carolina State University, Black HBCU here. And now the General Assembly here in South Carolina is calling to cut funding and grants from the institution because they did not want her to show up for a graduation. So that's a direct link there to that. And then I work at an institution myself. And so it is going to be weaponized. If you follow conservative principles, you get in line with us, or we cut funding to an institution that serves Black and brown people. And that is going to be what is going to continue to happen if Donald Trump's at the helm and people are loyal to Donald Trump.
When we come forward, we're going to continue this conversation. Also, Wes Moore's national tour to elect more Black governors. The death of Senator Lindsey Graham and what comes next in South Carolina. We got the right one here. And let us recall that got messier, not cleaner. Stick with us. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Dr. Isaac Wilson and William Godwin when we come forward. 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai, and always delighted to be in conversation with Dr. Isaac Wilson. He's a Democratic strategist, also former Florence County, South Carolina Democratic Party chair. Also, William Godwin, former, say it with me, y'all, former White House fellow. That's right, former White House fellow and Gary City Council president. Don't get it twisted. Welcome again to you both. Look, Wes Moore is busy. He's booked and busy. I want to talk about him because not only is he booked and busy, but Wes Moore is a man on a mission. Man on a mission. The Maryland governor said in a recent interview, quotes, "I am the only African-American governor in the country right now, but that's not a title that I'm proud of. I don't want to hold on to that title for very long." He spent recent days in Atlanta, kicking off a canvass for Keisha Lance Bottoms, the city's former mayor, now running for Georgia governor. In fact, now the Democratic nominee for governor. And he's headed to Nevada next to boost Attorney General Aaron Ford's gubernatorial run. Both Georgia and Nevada, they happen to be swing states. And that matters a great deal. Especially in 2028. Make of that what you will. William, you served in the White House. Isaac, you've been in the trenches in South Carolina politics. Is this smart coalition building, Isaac?
Oh, most definitely. Smart. You get one of the brightest minds and one of our greatest African American leaders to go around the country and talk issues. If anybody knows issues with a governing city like Baltimore, he knows the issues and the lay of the land. And we're having here in South Carolina. He has fully endorsed Jermaine Johnson for governor here in South Carolina. Last week, we had him in Florence County. He was in Richland County. So this is what we need to do more of in the Democratic Party. And he's right. It's something not to be proud of being the only black governor, because more black governors mean more perspectives at the decision-making table and not just his own perspective. So Democratic candidates need to focus on getting people like that out, and then talking about the issues of lowering costs and improving schools, protecting healthcare, creating jobs. That is the guy we need on the campaign trail. Now we need to get more people out there to help him.
William, is Wes Moore, is he just being honest about the fact that black political power in governor's mansions is still shockingly rare? I mean, is that one of your takeaways, from the frame that he is offering folks? And talk to us from your vantage point, as somebody who has been elected yourself on the local level, as somebody who has knowledge of how the federal government at least is supposed to work for the people. Talk to us about why and how having more black governors in this particular moment can be extremely consequential in a good way.
Well, when there's a move from federal protections and federal rights to states' rights, right, which seems to be the wave, the ebb and flow that we're currently in, it is important to have strong state leadership, both in the executive branch of state government, but of course the state legislatures. And we've seen just how powerful they can be with our current redistricting madness that's happening around the country. But look, it is a paucity, right? Wilder of Virginia, Patterson of New York, Patrick of Massachusetts, Moore of Maryland. We're talking about 4 governors, based on my count, who've been in office in all of American history. And so there is certainly a need for more, for more. And I'm hopeful that we'll begin to see that.
Yeah. And I've also got to ask you, about what Wes Moore may be telegraphing, William. I mean, 2028 is around the corner. As I mentioned before, Georgia and Nevada are swing states.
Yeah.
If Keisha Lance Bottoms pulls it off in Georgia, if Aaron Ford pulls it out in Nevada, if Jermaine Johnson, who's running for governor of South Carolina, if he pulls it off, those are all really important states when it comes to the 2028 map. What could this mean in terms of, black political power deciding the next Democratic nominee for president?
I think it means a lot, and I think Wes Moore is being very strategic. He has not really picked up a lot of steam in terms of getting high numbers as our potential top 3, top 4 2028 Democratic candidates, but he's still in the conversation. And I think he's been very smart to make the rounds. Even a year ago, I was in South Carolina at Jim Clyburn's annual fish fry, and Wes Moore was there. And so I think he's getting his name out there, he's getting his face out there, he's making those relationships, building those coalitions, which ideally will come back potentially not only to benefit us as Americans and the Democratic Party, but it may benefit him to be able to lean on those relationships should he be the Democratic nominee or be competitive to be the nominee. I think there's a lot that we don't know yet, right? And sometimes the person who may not be the top of the conversation slowly and quietly rises to the forefront. And sometimes you don't want to rise too soon, right? In the way that Governor Newsom perhaps has or did, and maybe he still might reappear, right, as our number one. So there's a lot out there, but I think he's doing it smart. He's making it rounds, but most importantly, he's showing leadership that's very, very much needed across the party and across the country.
Do you think Governor Newsom has peaked?
Oh, I think he definitely did. I don't think it's quite over for him, but he's run into some challenges, right? He's run into some stumbles. And obviously, I think the bigger you put yourself out there, you make yourself a big target. And we still got a long way to go. But I wouldn't count him out. Let me be very clear. But I definitely think he's got to reemerge with some more activity and some more energy pretty soon.
All right, interesting take there. Look, speaking of folks who have emerged in a very big way on the national stage, I want to talk about Senator Lindsey Graham's sister making some news today. Senator Lindsey Graham, of course, died last week, and his sister Darlene Graham Norton was appointed by Governor Henry McMaster and sworn in to serve out the remainder of his term. She has now announced that she's going to run for a full term in the Senate, further complicating an already rushed Republican process to pick a nominee following her brother's death. This is drawing a whole lot of criticism right now. Some conservative commentary has already dubbed the arrangement birthright senatorship, pointing to the family dynamic between the appointment. We're going to leave the politics of dynasty to you both, but this is worth watching in a state with as much Black political history and organizing power as South Carolina. I've got to ask you, Isaac, since you are right there on the ground in South Carolina, how are people reacting to a prediction that you made long ago right here on this show that if Senator Graham's sister was appointed to that seat, you suspected that she would run for a full term?
She's going to keep her brother's legacy alive. This is going to be a memorial win if she happens to win the race. Nobody wants to go against his sister in this kind of climate. And the people of South Carolina don't like it because it's like you're forcing another Graham on us, and she's going to have the views of her brother. So this election should be about healthcare, wages, education, all that good stuff, but it's not. It's going to be about the legacy of Lindsey Graham, and let us not put her sister through any strife and not elect her to the Senate. And so people are going to go out and they're going to do that. So Republicans may see continuity, but Democrats see an opportunity to elect a real leader to lead us for the next 20, 22 years and not under Republican control like we've been.
William, what does President Trump get out of this? I mean, he didn't waste any time after Lindsey Graham's death saying that he wanted his sister Darlene to be appointed to fulfill the remainder of his term. Now, Darlene expressing that she intends to run for a full term. Clearly, President Trump picked her for a reason. I like to think that it probably lessens, the unpredictability of picking anybody else. What say you?
Well, it's funny. I mean, the relationship between Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump has been a very interesting one, right? You go all the way back 10 years to 2016 when Lindsey Graham was attacking Trump, saying he was a joke, saying he was not serious, didn't know what he was doing. You had Trump doxing Lindsey Graham, giving the whole world his phone number. And so obviously Graham came around and played ball and decided to be a member of the team. And I think that that's what Trump is looking for. He's looking for loyalty. And he knows the power of his voice within the GOP, whatever the state is. And so she will owe him immediately, right? And of course, it's not unusual for one to finish a term. I think Susan Collins maybe even did that for her spouse and a few others, perhaps, who've served in the Senate and in the House. But the idea that she'd run for the full term is certainly, I think, unique and interesting given her background. I will say she is an HBCU alum, I understand, of South Carolina State University. I think she got a master's degree there, so maybe she'll be able, if she's successful, to patch some of those relationships and continue to secure funding for one of our beloved HBCUs in Orangeburg, South Carolina.
I mean, Isaac, what does that mean? I mean, are people on the ground in South Carolina, are they buying that? Are they buying the narrative of her as a proud HBCU alum? I mean, do you expect her to be an HBCU champion as senator?
No, and we're not buying it. You got several people calling for them to see the degree. We want to see it. We actually want to see that you have it framed in South Carolina State and your name. So people are not buying that. And if she was such a proud alumni, she would have stepped in and told Pam Yvette, hey, back off. These people aren't a mob. this is my illustrious HBCU. She did not do that. She sat back quietly. So I don't think people are paying that any attention. And a familiar last name might get attention, but it doesn't earn you votes. And Joe Biden was a familiar last name when he came to South Carolina, but he was losing. It wasn't until James Clyburn stepped in and said, this is the man that we need to elect. And that's how Joe Biden got ahead. So just because she has name recognition of a Graham doesn't mean that she'll get votes here. And I think she's going to lose the race either way.
Ooh, you think she's going to lose in the primary, the Republican primary, or lose in the general?
I think she will lose in the Republican primary.
Interesting. Well, look, we got a source right there on the ground. Keep the information flowing. In our remaining minutes, I want to talk about just this wild story. This wild story that's emerged with the FDA. It's worth noting that on a quick public health note. The FDA now says that a lettuce sample from Taylor Farms de Mexico that tested positive for the parasite Cyclospora was actually a false positive, but don't hear that as an all clear. The agency has not backed off of its conclusion that Taylor Farms remains linked to a multi-state cyclosporiasis outbreak through its traceback investigation. Absence of evidence is never evidence of absence. That's what they say. Nearly 7,000 infections have been confirmed or are under investigation across 34 states. And if you've got shredded iceberg lettuce from a food service supplier sitting in your fridge, check the recall list. Gentlemen, in our remaining moments, I want to ask you about how you think this might play out. People don't play with recalls, and especially recalls that actually, impact the health of everyday people. I see this crisis getting worse by the day, not improving by the day. William, who's going to pay that political cost? And when are they going to pay it? Will be before or after the election?
I just think it gets to see. We got to see how bad this thing gets and how many folks are actually harmed. I know I've gone to parties recently and people are not serving lettuce or very conscientious about that. So we'll see. I mean, I think it really will depend over the next couple of weeks what the actual impact is to really determine whether there will be some true political fallout.
What say you, Isaac? Will there be a price to pay for this crisis of oversight? There are a lot of folks who have been speculating, saying that there are a number of these suppliers who've been able to skirt regulation because they are sort of friends of Trump or friendly with this administration. Will there be a price to pay for this? And if so, does that price come due before or after the election?
I think the Republicans will bear the price for this because this is exactly why independent public health agencies are important. And this is Donald Trump should have gone in there and just started tearing things and firing people and cutting agencies out. The FDA correcting a test and continuing to investigate isn't like a weakness. It is really how evidence-based decision-making works. And the priority should always be to protecting families and providing clear, accurate information. Donald Trump, them are not about providing accurate information. They're worried about a war. They're worried about getting more money to do that. He's worried about free speech. He's worried about everything else instead of having safe food for plenty of Americans. And so they will bear the cost of this because food safety is very, very important, especially when we have a shortage of food with farmers not getting what they need. So the food that we do have, we need to make sure it's safe for Americans to eat.
Is there a Doge connection to this story, William? I mean, I think I saw recently that Doge is basically packing up shop and, they're waving the mission accomplished flag, when in fact there are a number of unhappy members of Congress a number of unhappy senators, including a number of Republicans, that are not happy with the work of Doge. Is this an example, of government simply, abdicating its responsibility, or is it something else?
Well, government has made mistakes before, and it will make them in the future. But there's no doubt about it. Doge did not help. And the fact that a lot of experts and expertise has been shunned and removed or retired out of frustration with all the changes and with this sort of general negative attitude toward the federal workforce. We've seen it across the board, SBA, DOJ, everywhere. And now they're trying to often fill in those gaps because they recognize that these positions, yes, some of them may have been overkill, right? But most of them were, there's a reason why they were created. And maybe it only appears when there's a crisis or only appears during a certain time of the year. And if you're only taking a microscopic look at it in 3 months or 4 months when Doge was at its peak, you're going to miss the importance of these agencies and of these human beings and American citizens who are doing this important work. And so I think we're seeing the crisis really unfold as more and more things happen. And we're going to continue to see it, I believe, over the next couple of years. And then we're going to see them rehiring a lot of people or hiring more people to come in and fill those gaps because we're causing harms, which are expensive. And we're also probably losing money by not collecting things that we should be collecting or making errors that are unforced.
My thanks to both of you, to both Dr. Isaac Wilson and William Godwin for helping us to separate the fact from the fiction. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, the quiet part out loud as we remember the life of Nolan Wells laid to rest today.